and callers, and not necessarily those of this station, its staff, management, or sponsors.
Are you a family caregiver? Are you caregiving for someone who can no longer take care of themselves? Are you overwhelmed? This is Caregiver Solutions Info with Marcia Teele. Marcia will be hosting an hour of true stories and information, tips and updates of the latest research and necessary information in the caregiving field, focusing on you, the family caregiver. An Alzheimer's disease and dementia care expert, Marcia has 15 years of hands-on experience at Arden Courts, a leader in assisted living dementia communities here in the U.S. Marcia covers everything you need to know as a family caregiver, especially if you care for a loved one with Alzheimer's disease or other related dementia or chronic illness. If you have a friend or relative that is also a family caregiver, call them now. They won't want to miss a minute. And let them know they can watch on caregiversolutions.info. And they can listen on WNN 1470 AM in South Florida or nationally on the iHeartRadio app. Now, sit back, relax, and learn from our host, Marcia Teele, as she brings information to you that may just be the caregiving solution you need.
Hello and welcome to this week's Caregiver Solution Info Show. I'm Marcia Teele, your host, and I'm so glad that you could join us today. We have another wonderful program for you, the family caregiver. We are live out of Boca Raton, Florida, and this show is related to caregiving, especially caregivers or caring for someone that can't care for themselves, and a focus on dementia, Alzheimer's, vascular dementia, whatever kind of memory loss it might be. So if that describes you, then you've found the right place, and you're going to enjoy this show because today is going to be quite different. Caregivers go through a lot of emotions, a lot of feelings. If you're a caregiver, obviously, I'm preaching to the choir, as they say, but as a caregiver, have you ever felt angry? Have you felt guilty? Have you felt lonely? Do you feel that no one understands? Have you lost your faith? Have you lost hope? Or maybe you just feel lost and don't know really what you're feeling. And that is a terrible feeling, as we all know. Everyone has experienced all of these feelings. But when you combine that with the stress and the responsibility of caregiving, it can be overwhelming. So today I'm very happy to have my special guest with us today because he's going to enlighten us and share all of his expertise, his experience, and his knowledge to help us and guide us through the times when we're feeling all of these feelings and maybe even why we're feeling them and how we can help overcome those feelings to be a better person, to be a better caregiver, to make our journey a little bit easier as we're going through the caregiving steps every day, one day at a time, one step at a time sometimes. So I'm very happy to introduce and welcome today. This is so exciting for me, and especially because today's his birthday, too, so I have to say happy birthday.
Thank you.
Rabbi Pinchas Taylor. Welcome, Rabbi Taylor.
Thank you very much.
I'm so glad you're here, especially taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us on your birthday, so happy birthday.
Thank you.
Rabbi Taylor is currently the Director of Adult Education and Outreach at the Chabad in Plantation, Florida. So that's where you're currently located.
Yep.
But he has a lot of jobs and a lot of titles that he carries. And I would like to give you just a few of them. First of all, he's a graduate of the Rabbinical College of America. And he has a lot of projects that he's involved in helping people. He's a huge helper. He's a lecturer. He's a motivator. He's a life coach. He's a problem solver. He's an author. And if that wasn't enough, wait, there's more. He has an online following, tens of thousands of people with his lectures. We'll talk a little bit about that. And he's currently teaching a class, Jewish Thoughts, at a women's seminary for higher education. And he has a weekly show called Taylor Talks, in which he talks about doing your best, being your best, and how to do that. So I'm very happy that you're here, and hopefully you'll be able to share some of all of that with us and our audience today regarding caregiving. And I do want to mention too that you do have a lot of experience with caregivers through the temple and also through hospice, as you're currently also a chaplain for one of the hospices here in Palm Beach County. So thank you again for coming, and let's just delve right in because I know there's a lot to cover. So, Rabbi, when you encounter caregivers that are feeling angry and guilty, and they're just so angry because their spouse, let's say, has been diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. And they are angry because they feel like, well, how's this going to affect my life? This wasn't how we envisioned our retirement together. I'm so angry, and then it follows, of course, through other feelings. What can you say to caregivers regarding anger, and how can we help them, especially if there's a faith-based approach? And I think this is something that we haven't really talked about much on this program, coming from a faith-based approach, helping caregivers. So let's just put that out there.
Sure. Well, thanks again for being here, and thank you again for the invitation. And it's a pleasure to be here talking about all these very important topics. I think the first rule of caregiving, especially from a spiritual perspective, is to recognize the interconnectivity of all human beings, and that means that you, as a caregiver, also need a caregiver. And it's something that I think a lot of times caregivers, martyr themselves and sort of take for granted the idea that you're a human being too that needs support. You want to be you're a caregiver, and we're used to being, the one that is the caregiving. We're used to being the giver, but we also have to have the balance of being willing to be a receiver as well. Because all of these emotions that we have, be it anger, be it guilt, these are all normal emotions. And a lot of times, we have, sometimes what takes place is that a person will have like a redoubled emotion. So in other words, they'll be angry at the situation, and then they'll be angry at themselves for being angry. So you're like losing on both fronts. You're not only angry at the situation itself, but now you're angry at yourself for being angry. And emotions in general kind of work like that. That, you're depressed, right? And then you're depressed at the fact that you're depressed.
Because you're not supposed to
Because
be?
you're not supposed, well, just, it depends on the situation. But we sometimes lock ourselves further down in an emotion because the emotion sort of like compounds itself. And so the first rule I think that it's important to know is that, like the balance, the yin-yang, the giver and receiver that is present everywhere in creation has to be present as a caregiver as well. So you have to remember that if you are a caregiver, you have to be a care receiver as well, and recognize your limits, that you can give to another, but you need support as well. And so if a person is dealing with anger or with guilt or anxieties that come, or fear, all normal, good, healthy emotions that you would expect to encounter in these very challenging situations, the very first step from a spiritual standpoint is to make sure that you have the support that you need as well.
A lot of caregivers would maybe seem selfish if they were worried about themselves and not about the person they're taking care of. They don't want to appear selfish, and they want to, like you said, maybe be a martyr and do or die, which in some cases they're going to die first because of all the stress and not taking care of themselves. And I'm sure you've seen, situations, and that would also be happening in caregiving where they're the ones suffering more than the person they're caring for.
Oh, absolutely. And we have to remember, and it's also a very, I would say, a fundamental idea that a caregiver has to know, is that self-care is care for the person. So whether that's how people look at it and how an onlooker is going to look at it, if you're not your best because you're not eating right and you're not sleeping, you're fixated so much, you're consumed, and you're not giving yourself the ability to balance, that's going to affect the level of care that you're able to provide as well. If you're walking into the person you're caring with bags under your eyes, and you can barely think straight, and you can barely operate because, again, you're not eating right or sleeping right or going about your business as best as you can and as much as you can, then that's going to affect the care that you're giving as well. So, like they always say, in general in life, sometimes one step back is two steps forward. So the idea of caring for oneself, we shouldn't look at that as being something selfish. We should look at that as this is another avenue of how I need to take care of this person that needs my help. If I'm not taking care of myself, I'm also not taking care of them in the best way that I can either.
Yeah, really good point. I like that compounding effect that you talked about, because it does happen, and caregivers don't realize it's happening to them. And when you mention that they need support, you're not talking about necessarily a support group, are you?
No, just you need to know who you can count on, and that can be people that are in your family, that can be friends that you have, good friends, that can be a faith community, whatever. Wherever you can go, and if you don't have one, it's important to try to create one. And sometimes I don't want to say that it's too late, because like when you're already a caregiver and you don't have your own support system, it's never too late. But it's something that a person should be aware of. Part of our roles in the world, in whatever station in life we find ourselves, is engaging with the world around us. And there's something missing within ourselves if we aren't engaging in some way in the world around us, other people and projects and ideas. And it's important to know who the people in your life are that you can count on, that bring out the best in you, in particular in this time. Sometimes the people that we are friendly with create more anxiety in us, and we don't need that when it comes. I'm not saying we should cut them off, and certainly not, cut them off at any time or even when we're caregiving. But just know that who are the type of people that are going to bring you, a certain sense of tranquility or empowerment, not more anxiety and more stress.
I'm so glad you said that, and I had to chuckle there for a moment, because if people are like me, when you talk about people that bring stress into your life, that add more stress, but you're friends with them, or at least acquaintances with them, but you can only take them in small doses sometimes, right?
Absolutely.
Personalities, everybody has a different personality, and sometimes when you're a caregiver, you don't need that person who's going to be judging you all the time. You don't need that person who's going to be giving you a lot of maybe unsolicited advice that you didn't ask for.
Absolutely.
That's going to cause you a lot of stress. Even though they might be a good friend of 30 years, they might not be the best person in your corner at this particular time. So I'm really glad that you said that, because there was a lady who had just moved to Florida with her husband. They retired, both of them, and they moved down to retire to Florida. And wasn't long after that the husband did get diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. So, as I mentioned in the beginning of the show, here they are, and she's like, why me? This isn't how I envisioned our retirement to be. And they didn't even have any friends. They just moved in. They hadn't met the neighbors. They had no family down in Florida. So she turned to her faith-based community. And I think that is a great thing, because talk about how a faith-based community can help a person when they don't have that support that they need.
Sure. I mean, in a good faith-based community, just the sense of community can bring a certain level of stability, of foundation, of balance in our lives. I've met many people who I wouldn't, nor would they describe themselves as religiously observant, but are active and involved in faith communities because you have people of similar backgrounds and oftentimes, similar worldviews, and at least in certain general areas, that are there in order, like for the purpose of making the world a better place. That typically people who are connected in faith groups are trying to do their best in the world and to help people, and that really is the motivation in being involved in one. Whether a person is particularly religious or not, or how involved they are in their own observances, that's their own business. But as far as people who are connected with a faith group and a faith community, all of the people have one thing in common: they want to do good in the world. They're looking to make the world a better place, and they feel that this is the place to do it. And so being a part of that, whatever your religious affiliation is and whatever your religious background is extraordinarily helpful just for a person to be a part of a community. Being a part of a community of like-minded, I'm an Eagle Scout. I was in the Boy Scouts.
Okay, my son too. Great.
I think the Boy Scouts of America is one of the greatest organizations that have ever hit the United States. It's over 100 years old, been here over 100 years, and it's obviously not a religious group per se. They have all faiths and backgrounds and whatnot, but everyone's there for a purpose, for making the world a better place. In some capacity,
right,
of bringing out the best of what a boy is supposed to be,
mm-hmm,
right? Carrying from childhood to manhood in a way that is wholesome, in a way that is meant to impact the community. And so even a structure like that isn't religious-based, but is geared around the idea of helping people, the idea of community, the idea of support system for each other. It's not describable how much this will benefit a person.
And I totally understand what you're saying, because some of my son's friends that he met in Boy Scouts as he went through the trail to Eagle Scout, they're still his best friends today. They make lifelong friends.
Absolutely.
So I want to encourage everybody listening to take Rabbi Taylor's advice and, reach out and find a community that you can identify with. We're going to take a quick commercial break, but when we come back, we're going to be asking Rabbi Taylor, why do bad things happen to good people? That's a big one, so stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Arden Courts is not just a place to live, it's a place to call home. Residential living combined with quality caregiving. This is the philosophy behind Arden Courts. Communities created exclusively for individuals with Alzheimer's disease and related dementia who would benefit from a safe and structured environment. For additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides, call 888-478-2410 to locate a community nearest you. Inquire about our educational seminars, resource library, or support groups, or simply feel free to ask questions you may have about Alzheimer's and related dementias. At Arden Courts, we know, we understand, and we can help because memory care is all we do. Remember, call 888-478-2410 for additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides. You are listening to your host, Marcia Teele, an Alzheimer's disease and dementia care expert on CareGiverSolutions.info. If you have a question or wish to share a story, call into the show at 888-565-1470 and talk with Marcia. Now, back to Caregiver Solutions.
Welcome back to Caregiver Solutions Info Show. My guest today is Rabbi Pinchas Taylor, and Rabbi Taylor is the Director of Adult Education and Outreach of the Chabad of Plantation, Florida, and talking with us today about faith-based communities, how faith can help caregivers throughout their struggles, which leads me to ask this question: why do bad things happen to good people? I think that's something that we hear all the time. you have a caregiver, a spouse, they get a diagnosis of their spouse, and it's all downhill from there, and they think, why me? What did I do to deserve this? This is a terrible thing. We're too young to have to be dealing with this. My life is ruined. My life is over. What can we say to help people that are feeling that way?
So I think there's two things. Number one, the idea of why bad things happen to good people is probably the core philosophical conundrum that has, been poking at religion since the beginning of time. So to try and give a proper philosophically sound dissertation, with the time that we have, I think is a bit much. But to touch on some points. Number one, when people say those types of things, what they need is emotional support. There are philosophical answers, but when a person is saying the whole "why me" and "what did I do" and expressing those feelings, the way in which we can help the person best is by giving them emotional support rather than intellectual support. Intellect and emotions are two very, very different things.
But they go hand in hand in a lot of cases, don't they?
Yes and no. The intellect is kind of like the steering wheel, and the emotions are like the gas pedal. So they're two different tools that can go together, but they have very different functions. A jackhammer and a toothpick are also two different tools. But if you try to use the jackhammer for what the toothpick is for, and a lot of times our emotions will tell us one thing and our intellect will tell us another. And, we have to listen to the intellect as far as practically what should be done. But that doesn't negate the feeling that we have, that it's a very real feeling.
So what happens when people try to match their heart and their head? So the head is the intellect, their heart is their emotion.
That's right.
And they want to be on the same page a lot of times so they can make a decision. And they feel like I need to be my heart needs to be in my head and my head in my heart to feel that I can intelligently and make this decision, do the right thing. But it's a tug of war a lot of times. And they think they know what they want to do in their head, and then when they start to do it, they pull back because their emotions get the better of them. So how can you balance that, or do we need to balance that?
Oh, well, we definitely need to balance. The one key way of doing that is by having an objective outside source. Like we were talking before the show about people who call you or people that you call when you ask, how would you approach this? Mm-hmm. And it's not that maybe the person knows more than you, but in that particular situation, perhaps you can give a more objective view, depending on looking at your situation with more objective eyes, will maybe help you make an intellectually sound decision as opposed to one that's emotionally based, where we're trying to grasp on to things sometimes that don't really make all that much sense in the long run, but feel good in the short term.
Yeah, well, for example, a lot of caregivers struggle at home with taking care of their loved one, and they might be told that it's time to put them in a memory community, to put them and get more help. And it's hard for them to make that decision because their heart and their head are doing two different things. The head is saying, well, maybe you're right. Maybe I am tired, but oh my gosh, I can't let go. I promise never to put them in a home. You have all of these feelings, and it's a dichotomy and trying to make that decision. And I see caregivers struggle with this all the time. And they have professionals on both ends that tell them what to do. So they've got a doctor on one side that for the medical and the intellectual that says, based upon my professional, a professional medical opinion, you need to put your husband in an assisted living for memory care. Sure. And at the other end of it, you have adult children who are tugging and saying, no, Mom, you can't do that. It's not right. You can't do that to Dad. And that is what a lot of caregivers struggle with.
That's definitely a struggle, and it's hard to give I think, a blanket answer, because obviously the severity of each person's case is it varies. You know, oftentimes one approach, obviously, again, depending on the situation, sometimes there's a happy medium that can be found somewhere in the middle, where if the decision becomes too difficult to make, that there's that emotion tugging, that I would never put my loved one in a home, but the intellectual aspect, the doctors, the pressure kind of saying maybe this is the best thing. There sometimes maybe a middle ground that would be able to provide some of the care in which the doctors are suggesting, but at the same time allowing you to stay true to your word. So like an adult daycare that maybe specializes in memory care. So it's not a full-time thing, but maybe they'll get the extra care and attention that they need. They're, depending on the case, of trying to find that balance between the head and the heart, a very important thing to do. When it all seems when it all seems to be very real and very overwhelming, sometimes the way to do it is finding perhaps a middle ground of compromise that can satisfy the emotions and the intellect.
So that being said, where does prayer enter into all of this, and how can prayer help a caregiver make that balance? It's important for a lot of people to sleep on it. They'll say, I need to sleep on this before I can make a decision. And other caregivers told me I need to pray about it before I can make a decision.
Sure.
What do you have to say about that?
Well, prayer ultimately is about soul searching, and one of the things that more than asking God to intervene, it's looking within to make yourself a vessel to try to carry out God's will the best that you can. That is more, I think, the idea of prayer, and or certainly the focus when it comes to being a caregiver is to say, God, please allow me to be a proper vessel to give this person the care that they need. Allow me, give me the strength that I need to be able to give them the care. Give me the charisma. Give me the resources, physically, spiritually, emotionally, in every area. Put people in my life that are going to be of support to me. There's a wide spectrum. Without asking God per se, make this go away. If God wants to do that, it's certainly something that is, you can bring up. I'm not negating anybody's prayers, but I think the focus of our prayers when it comes to caregiver situations should be, please empower me, allow me to be the best caregiver, a vessel to be your hands, in this person's life.
Yeah, I like that. Change me, don't change maybe the situation, or don't change the other person, but change me to adapt better.
Correct.
I like that. That's awesome. We're going to take a quick break and be giving a book away in just a minute, so stay tuned, and we'll be back with more from Rabbi Teele.
Arden Courts is not just a place to live, it's a place to call home. Residential living combined with quality caregiving. This is the philosophy behind Arden Courts. Communities created exclusively for individuals with Alzheimer's disease and related dementia who would benefit from a safe and structured environment. For additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides, call 888-478-2410 to locate a community nearest you. Inquire about our educational seminars, resource library, or support groups, or simply feel free to ask questions you may have about Alzheimer's and related dementias. At Arden Courts, we know, we understand, and we can help because memory care is all we do. Remember, call 888-478-2410 for additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides. You are listening to your host, Marcia Teele, an Alzheimer's disease and dementia care expert on CareGiverSolutions.info. If you have a question or wish to share a story, call into the show at 888-565-1470 and talk with Marcia. Now, back to Caregiver Solutions.
Welcome back to Caregiver Solutions Info Show. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank our national sponsor, Arden Court's Memory Care Communities. Arden Courts is a leader when it comes to memory care and helping caregivers and the person with the memory loss to lead a better life. It all comes down to taking care of the caregiver and the person that needs the support. And so Arden Courts is a great resource, and if you're a caregiver and you're watching this and you don't have this book called The 36-Hour Day, I would recommend you calling Arden Courts on their toll-free number to get this book, and their number is 888-478-2410. Just give them a call, tell them that you heard about this offer on the Caregiver Solutions Info Show, and they'll get your name and address and make sure that they mail a book right out to you. It's a wonderful resource to have, full of ideas and topics that you would want to peruse throughout your caregiving journey, either from front to back or chapter here and chapter there, whatever might fit your situation. So call today at 888-478-2410 and get the 36-Hour Day book. You'll be really happy that you did. So my special guest today is Rabbi Pinchas Taylor, and he is the Director of Adult Education and Outreach at the Chabad of Plantation, Florida. And we are talking about faith-based communities and how our faith can help us through a lot of these challenging situations. And most recently, we finished before commercial talking about why bad things happen to good people. But I think there's more to be said about that, and you go ahead and lead that charge.
Sure. So I mean, we said before that usually when people are asking these types of questions, and typically the support that a person needs when confronting such an idea is more emotional support than it is intellectual support. And but at the same time, it might be worthwhile just kind of giving a standing on one leg approach, just a very sort of quick way to think about it, maybe on the back burner, to that we as a caregiver or just as a person in our life, we all have challenges, we all have things that we go through. We consider ourselves usually to be good people, or trying to be good people, and we ask ourselves sometimes, why do these things happen? And the truth is, one of the things we have to always remember is that a human being is much more than the time that they live in this world. We are inherently, we are souls. We are ourselves before we came into a body. Our souls will continue to exist long after we're in a body. And so in the eternality of the soul and the eternality of the universe and everything that is meant to be, our little blip of the 70, 80 years that we get in our lifetime is hardly a way to properly get a proper view as to what is in store for our soul, and where it came from and where it's going and what is needed in its perfection. And it's like watching 3 seconds of a movie and trying to determine who's the good guy, who's the bad guy, what's the storyline. And we're just here on a blip of eternity that is our soul. And to understand why we're going through a particular challenge at a particular moment, or why the challenge was dealt in this way or in that way, is kind of an unfair question. One of the things that in our community, in the from a Jewish philosophical outlook, is that things are sad. Things can be sad for us, but that nothing truly bad happens from God. Nothing bad can come upon us. Things are sad, and things can be very tough emotionally for us, but that from the front view, it's not a bad thing in the grand scheme of things. One of the things It says in the Torah that when Moses gained forgiveness of the golden calf from the Jewish people had worshipped the golden calf, God was not happy about this, and Moses gained forgiveness. And when Moses saw that it was an auspicious time, this is the question that he asked: why do bad things happen to good people? And what God responds to him is that no man can see my face and live. In other words, you, human being, with your limitations, seeing the worlds, in time and space, can't get the full spectrum of why things fall the way that they do. But a way to think about that, looking at having the front view and having the back view, I'm reminded. So my great grandmother, when I would go into her house, and she passed away when I was 13, but in her house, on the walls, she had these needlepoint works of art. And I think a lot of people can probably relate to that, and a lot of grandmothers have that type of artwork in their house. And when you're walking down the hallway and you see these beautiful needlepoint works of art, it looks wonderful. You see the house, and you see in the back the mountains and the river, and whatever the scene is, it looks like a beautiful scene. If you take that picture off the wall and you turn it around, it's just chaos.
There's a lot of knots, unraveling, and strings and yarn. And
it's disgusting. It looks terrible.
Right.
So if you were holding that up and someone was looking from the back view and someone was looking from the front view, you say, describe what you're seeing. The person who's looking from the back, he says, it's just chaos, it's destruction, it's gross. There's no semblance of any meaning to this. And then the person from the front view says, no, this is beautiful. There's so much meaning. The symmetry, the beauty is captivating. And this is something that we kind of have to keep in the back burner of our mind, that our reality is kind of like the back view.
I like that, because you don't know why something happens. Only God knows why something happens. And I always say everything happens for a reason, and we don't always know what the reason is. And sometimes it's revealed to us, but many times it's not. And I think about that a lot when I talk to caregivers, that yes, this is sad, like you mentioned. There's a reason for it. It's hard to fathom why this happened, but sometimes it is revealed, but maybe not in our time. And I think if, like you say, look at the bigger picture, to do that, it's hard for caregivers, obviously, when they're in the trenches to see that, but that's a good thing for them to, like you say, put on the back burner, put in the back of their mind when they're struggling and looking at all of these things that they feel that have been dumped on them. For what reason? Is it a test? Was I bad? Is God testing me? What good can come out of this?
Sure.
And a lot of people that do go through bad times, and not necessarily caregivers, or they are caregivers actually of small children who have an accident and die, and then they want to do good from that, and so they start a foundation in that child's name to do education and things like that. So they're trying to make that good come out of something that was bad and tragic in their life.
Absolutely.
But what if somebody has actually lost their faith? They feel that they've been forsaken, that they don't feel that God is listening to them when they pray, because we say go to prayer. Prayer is a good thing, but what if they feel their prayers aren't answered or aren't even being heard? What can we say to help those people?
So, people's lack of faith, people, kind of pushing aside their faith, is obviously motivated from a lot of different scenarios, and so it's hard to also have like a one-size-fits-all,
because they're angry. Let's say they're just angry at God, and I'm not going to talk to you anymore. I'm not going to share with you anymore because I'm angry and I don't want anything to do with you, God. I hear that a lot of times.
And it's understandable, and it's not something that anyone should be ashamed of, and it's not something that is really unexpected. At the same time, if a person finds themselves in that situation, but at the same time wants to regain that, is open to, because if you don't want to regain it, then you're not going to pursue anything. You're just, it's not like I'm going to go to synagogue, or I'm not going to go to my house of worship, or be involved in any of these type of activities if I have no interest in regaining my faith. But if a person finds themselves angry at God, or just feels forsaken, not really angry, but just feels like God has sort of abandoned them, but wants to feel reconnected, and then the best way to do that is first to get involved in a religious community, because the community aspect really does a lot for a person. We shouldn't overlook just how important being a part of a community helps a person on an individual level. What I would add to that as well, if a person again wants this, and this can only be if a person wants, that they should learn more. Because a lot of the times, and this is by nobody's fault of their own, but I know the Jewish community best. I imagine that it happens similarly in other faith backgrounds. But in the Jewish community, a lot of times kids will go to Hebrew school, and they'll learn certain basic things until they're 13 years old, and then they'll have their bar bat mitzvah, and then after that, it's like, they have nothing to do with religion anymore. They have nothing to do with their faith.
Well, they're teenagers now, and
that's fine.
They want to
right.
do their own thing, and that happens in so many religious communities.
Yeah, I understand that, and that's fine. But what ends up happening though, is that the person turns 20 and 30 and 40 and 50 and 60, and the real juice of what they need to know, of what they should know, that what will be impactful in their life, the strength, the faith, the real juice, the philosophy of their faith, they have an 11-year-old's understanding of. And so there's nothing in our life that we would give any importance to, give any credence to, if we have an 11-year-old's understanding of it. So I would encourage a person who's in their 40s or in their 50s or wherever it is to go back and learn more, take adult education classes, find where that, what I like to call Disney Judaism or Disney religion that you learned when you were 11, right? Which, again, was valuable at the time, but now that you have much more life experience, and there's plenty of areas that you'll find tremendous value, I guarantee, just by exploring your faith a little bit more.
Yeah, that's a great idea, because people are more mature and they have gone through life experiences. But I love that analogy. If you're in your 50s and you're going through a terrible crisis, your only understanding from a religious point of view is what you learned as a child. And how is that really going to help you as an adult in a more mature situation? So that's really great advice. Thank you for that. We're going to take our last quick break, and when we come back, more wisdom from Rabbi Teele. So stay with us.
Arden Courts is not just a place to live, it's a place to call home. Residential living combined with quality caregiving. This is the philosophy behind Arden Courts. Communities created exclusively for individuals with Alzheimer's disease and related dementia who would benefit from a safe and structured environment. For additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides, call 888-478-2410 to locate a community nearest you. Inquire about our educational seminars, resource library, or support groups, or simply feel free to ask questions you may have about Alzheimer's and related dementias. At Arden Courts, we know, we understand, and we can help, because memory care is all we do. Remember, call 888-478-2410 for additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides. You are listening to your host, Marcia Teele, an Alzheimer's disease and dementia care expert on CareGiverSolutions.info. If you have a question or wish to share a story, call into the show at 888-565-1470 and talk with Marcia. Now, back to Caregiver Solutions.
Welcome back. My guest today is Rabbi Pincus Taylor. And Rabbi Taylor and I have been talking about caregiving, a lot of it from a spiritual point of view, what we can do to help ourselves to help the person we're caring for. He's full of great knowledge and wisdom, and been enjoying our talk so far together, Rabbi Taylor. So we talked about prayer and how caregivers pray for being more of a vessel, for God to mold them to be the kind of caregiver they need to be, to give them the tools that they need, right, and the resources that they need. And they're praying for this. Are there other kind of tools from a spiritual point of view that caregivers could utilize every day, any day?
Sure. So there's a few different things that I think are really necessary for a person. The person doesn't have to be a religious person per se to have certain, I guess we could call them spiritual tools to use in their caregiving and being a support to somebody else. And being a support to somebody else isn't only about being a caregiver for someone who is currently has an illness or is aging or anything in that regard. It's a means of being a general support to somebody who needs your support. That could be someone who's in grief. That could be someone who is lonely. That could, whatever area you find yourself as a caregiver for another person, these would probably be good tools to take into consideration. I would say these are probably the main two pillars, the main two most important things, I would say.
Okay, let's have it.
So one thing in our community, in the Jewish community, particularly after a person passes away, you have a week where the family sits Shiva. It's a time where the family can process their grief and recall memories and tell stories. And it's really just a time of those who are immediate family members to process their grief. But the community comes and tries to be of support and to provide prayer and food and whatever
It's
whatever
a hard
it is.
time for everybody, even for families and friends, because it's very difficult to know what to say and what to do.
And that's exactly the point. When we're a caregiver and we're trying to support somebody, oftentimes the biggest challenge that people have is, what do I say?
Yes.
I want to be supportive. I have all the good intentions. I have, everything is good. I just don't know what to say. Right? And I want to say the right thing, and I don't want to offend them, and I don't want to make them cry, and whatever it is, we all good, all motivated from good aspects of the person.
Yes.
But
They get nervous.
they get nervous.
Yeah.
What do I say?
Uh-huh.
And the person has to remember, the greatest present that you can give someone is being present. Sometimes you don't have to say anything. The greatest present is being present. Your presence says more than your words can a lot of times.
Just being there.
Just being there. They say a picture's worth 1,000 words.
Yes.
So how many words is presence? That you came, that you're there.
You showed up.
That you called, that you texted, that whatever it was, that you are present. You're thinking about the person. You not overkilling it.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you gotta, there's always that balance of how much do they want, how much do they need, But if you're genuinely motivated that you want to be a support to another person, the greatest present is being present. That's number one. And so it takes some of the burden also of trying to figure out what's the right thing to say and how to say it and when to say it. You got to know that 80% of your work is done just by being present.
And maybe I'm sorry.
Right. Yeah.
I mean,
exactly.
I'm sorry, or I'm here for you.
Exactly.
Something real simple.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. The second thing that I was going to say goes hand in hand with that. It's being the listener as opposed to the giver. Sometimes the best way to be the caregiver is to be a care listener, right? To be the receiver, and just to sometimes say things, short things that might elicit the person wanting to share of themselves. So, not too open-ended, not like, say, how you doing? You know, like,
Right.
how are things? You know?
But did you eat lunch today? And, a simple question, they could find a way to serve, maybe.
Right. Or are you finding are you finding the support that you need? That's an open-ended question, but also very specific that allows them to open up. So they may say, no, I feel very alone, or I feel comfortable now that, 10 people are here, but, I've been feeling very alone and then that may be able to assist you more in assessing how you can be more of a support to that person, what you might be able to do for that person. But the more you can kind of put it, I don't want to say put it on them, but there is a magical secret in being a caregiver by being on the receiving end of the conversation.
Yeah, and that's interesting that you brought that up, because even a caregiver who is caring for a loved one that has memory loss, has Alzheimer's, I think sometimes they forget to listen to that person that has memory loss because they don't make sense sometimes. Their words are jumbled up, they're act incoherent, they say things that really you can't make much sense of, but they're talking. And a lot of caregivers don't take the time to listen.
Oh, yeah.
And that person who's talking, that person in front of you that has that memory loss, maybe in their mind they know what they're saying, but it's just coming out all jumbled up because of the Alzheimer's disease.
Right.
You need to listen, to stop and listen to them, because even they want to be heard. And you need to listen, and that is a gift.
Oh, sure.
And I learned that, working with caregivers and working with people with dementia. They want to talk to you. They want your attention. They want to look you in the eye. They want to know that you understand. And even if you don't really understand, they like the nod. They like the feeling that you're listening and you are there in the present, like you just said.
Certainly. And one of the schools of thought about interacting with Alzheimer's patients is that you join them where they are. Mm-hmm. If they're holding a doll and think that that's really their baby and they're discussing it as if it's a real baby, I've seen caregivers who try to correct the person. They say, no, it's not 1945 right now. It's 2019, mm-hmm. And certainly they have good motivation and good intentions, and they're trying to. And it is certainly a gut reaction as well. Like, well, maybe if I can sort of bring them back to the present, that they'll remember. But that may not be where the person's at right now. It may not be what's best for the person else. Mm-hmm. That might cause more confusion and more and make things a little bit even tougher.
Yes.
And so joining them where they are.
Meet the person where they are.
Right.
And that really serves in a lot of situations, like with people in their grief and all of that, and not trying to say get over it because it's been 4 months already, get over it. Meet
Right.
them where they are, because
yeah.
everybody has their own time to go through all of this. I want to mention before we have to end today that you did write a book called Pillars of Faith. Yep. And it can be purchased off of your website. So we want to give your website
Sure.
PincusTaylor.com, PincusTaylor, PincusTaylor.com. And if you would like to contact Rabbi Taylor, send him an email, get some more information, ask a question, that's okay too,
Absolutely.
right? Okay.
Absolutely.
And you want to give your email address?
Yeah, I mean, there's on the website. There's also a contact tab, so
Okay.
you can just click contact, and that will send it directly to me, and I'll be happy to respond, to however I can help.
Yeah, and he's just wonderful with his time and his generosity. And thank you for coming today and
Pleasure.
being here. And we have talked about a lot of things, and certainly there needs to be more discussion about these things. But I know we've helped a lot of people today just by bringing up some of these topics and about faith and about staying true to who you are, but yet asking for help. And it's not a shame to ask for help. It's not a shame to look to be our best selves. And I know one of the things that you do lecture on is being your best self.
Yes.
And so we can always learn how to be better, right? We
Absolutely.
can always learn. So thank you again for being here.
Thank
and
you.
I appreciate you very, very much. And thank you all for coming and joining Caregiver Solutions Info Show today. We'll have another show next week, same place, same time. In the meantime, don't forget to call Art and Courts on their toll-free line to get your free 36-hour day book. And that number again is 888-478-2410. Call them, get the 36-hour day book. If you are listening and you're not a direct caregiver but know somebody who is, call for them. And be a giving person, right?
Absolutely.
And give to someone else. And you may be giving them just the thing that they need and meeting them where they are if they need that resource. It's a great thing to do. So we'll see you next time. Don't forget, give somebody a hug because they need it and so do you. And join us next week. And until then, stay safe and take care.
Thanks for joining us for this week's Caregiver Solutions with Marcia Teele. Join us next week as Marcia, who has 15 years of Alzheimer's disease and dementia care experience, brings you more needed information to help with the care of your loved one. This show can be seen again on caregiversolutions.info, and questions can be left on the site, which may be used on the program to help others. See you next week for more Caregiver Solutions.